G'day folks, and welcome to the December 2021 issue of Great Chesterford Junction. This is an update, and quite frankly not a lot has happened since the previous update. I mean, you may have seen a couple of short videos that I've put up, but yeah, nothing much has really happened. I've been doing some household renovation and other things have got in the way, but that's the way it goes. Life gets in the way sometimes. But anyway, we'll have a look at basically what's changed since the last update. Okay, at one stage I decided that on Bamford Terminus here it'd be good to have a runaround like this, so that's a new addition. I put that in, and with the idea that it would be good to be able to run say 5 or 6 wagons in here and run around them and quickly move them up into the sidings up the other end there, or you know, with the ability to run around, you can put them in the sidings just down below here. So I mean, that didn't take very long to do. It's just was the addition of a couple of points and then this straight section of track here. And because this is quite a significant spacing here between these two original tracks, I had to put one point in and then, you know, run a line across and work out where the next point should be situated. And of course I had to cut pieces of rail out, the original rail, so that I could insert the new points and the connecting track in between, plus holes had to be drilled below the tie bars for the point operation. They're not operational yet, but they will be at some stage, probably in the new year now, the way things are going. Yeah, so that, as I say, didn't take very long. What needed to be done here is, because these original tracks are sitting on a cork base, once I had the points in place, I needed to lay some card under this piece of track to get a nice sort of bed for it at the right height. And once that was done, well, then I could, you know, lay that across there and glue it in place and everything. I had a little bit of trouble matching the ballast to the original, but fortunately over the back part here of the station, I had removed a couple of rails years ago, and there was still some ballast sitting there, so I scraped that up and recovered that, and pretty much used that to do most of the job here, with the addition of some fine ballast that I had. And then, you know, I went over the whole lot with some acrylic paints to sort of colour everything roughly the same. So I think it's come up pretty well as far as the looks are concerned, and certainly the operation has been improved on this part of the railway. I've also made a subtle change to the way my block instruments work. What I've done, or what I've altered, actually allows me to now use these things in a more, well, actually it's a prototypical manner. What I was doing before was, or the way the thing was wired before, required one instrument to be set to train on line clear, and the other instrument to be set to train on line, to move a train between the two signal boxes, if you like. And that was all because of the way I'd set it up electrically. It was fine, everything worked fine, and everything still works fine. But I thought, really, the way these things are supposed to work is that the receiving instrument is supposed to have control over the section. So the sender who wants to send a train from Great Chesterford to Little Bardfield, or that's the Bamford box in this case, but who wants to send a train between the two signal boxes, all he's doing is sending bell codes in real life, and the person at the receiving end is changing the commutator to whatever the status of the line is. So My commutators actually have an effect on the electrical input to the rails in the block section, so I had to rethink it a bit, and I thought, how can I get around this and get more prototypical operation? And you wouldn't believe it, folks, but the solution was delightfully simple. Out in my workshop and out in the storage room behind me, I have in both areas a loop of track, and at each end of the loop both the rails are broken in both cases. So when originally I was using my instruments, I would have one instrument activating two of the rail brakes, and the other instrument on the other side would activate one of the rail brakes, which allowed the train to pass all the way around the loop and move from section to section. So all I had to do to make it prototypical was that the receiving instrument would have two extra wires travelling from its connection over to the other side of the room and vice versa. So that's all it required. And I mean, it's a bit hard to explain exactly how it works, but now one instrument controls the whole section, then that's the receiving instrument. So that's a lot of jargon, folks, so we'll just leave it at that, but just believe me, it works. So yeah, I thought that was good actually, and I'll have to retrain my grandsons on how to use this thing now. But it's actually easier to use, so that's good. Now the other thing that's changed here as well is that recently I won on eBay a controller. This is all that's left of it now because I've completely I've changed everything. But this was the original panel on it, and it had been modified. I got it for a very good price, and it turns out that it's a pulse wave modulation controller. When I received it, it was working. However, it had a little indicator LED which wasn't working. Some of the wiring was a bit dodgy. Actually, there was one broken wire which I had to repair, but I got it for a really good price. Unfortunately, the guy who sold it to me I think wasn't absolutely 100% with the truth. It's not what he told me, it's what he didn't tell me, I think. More a case of that sort of situation, but fortunately I was able to repair this thing, and as I say, I got it for a really cheap price. But what I've done is I've transferred all the guts out of this into this little controller here. So it's just in a neat little box. It's got an indicator light on it now. I've repaired that, and that all works. I've actually fitted a larger knob to it, so it's quite nice in the hand and it's good to use. And at the other end it's connected in with now these aviation microphone plugs, I believe, so that when you plug it in you've got a locking ring here that locks it in place, and I've got it switchable here as well. So I'm using it at the, well, put it this way, with the wiring I've done here, I can plug it into other areas on my railway as well. I've got all my controllers wired the same way so that you can mix and match and swap them around and all that sort of thing. So I'm not locked into using this one absolutely in this location. I can take it over and use it in my yard, and I can bring the yard one over here and plug it in here. So all that's good. The reason this is here is to control my cassette fiddle yard area. So when I would send a train to this yard from Great Chesterford, I was at full stretch on my other controller to actually see it arrive here. And so what I can do now is that when the train is ready to leave Great Chesterford platform over there, or yard, I can control it with this one, and I can see it come all the way through, and I'm here when it arrives, so I can control it properly. So that's made it kind of handy actually. I like that. I can dispatch a train from here as well using that controller, but I think what this also needs is probably some more block instruments now. We're working from behind a wall here, so I was thinking about building a block instrument into this wall. Basically just a panel fitted in there, and talking to Great Chesterford, but that's a project for the new year, I think. So yeah, still thinking about that one. Another little project over here at Little Barnfield was the installation of some panel lighting for this panel here, this control panel. So when the lights go out in the room, you know, you've got to be able to see which switches to use and all that sort of thing. So I just use this bit of aluminium channel. It's actually used to make metal picture frames. Anyway, I've cut it down and I got some 3mm, oh no, they're not 3mm, but the LED strips with the self-adhesive back, and I've fitted a length of that under the channel there, and I've put a switch here on the panel so that you can flick it on and off. I've got one on the lever frame here, so you can see that will light up as well. So that's quite effective when the room's in darkness. Yeah, okay, so that's another project. That was fairly simple. You know, it all takes time to run the wires through and all that sort of thing, but once you've got it done, it's just another one of those jobs out of the way. Another little project that's been underway, folks, and this is a joint project actually. I have a friend in Canberra, his name is Chris, and he doesn't actually have a railway yet, but he's planning to build one, but he's also into 3D printing. And he asked me if I'd be willing to accept some of his models that he prints and try them out on my railway and give him some feedback about how they go and any problems, all that sort of thing. And it's become a bit of a collaboration, I think. He sent me some good things through. But the thing he's been working on lately is this is a small buffer. Now this is the original design, and the new design just doesn't have that little bit of rail at the front, but that's basically what he's been working on. And these that one in particular was an FDM print, but to improve the model, the FDMs were a little bit on the coarse side, but once they're painted up and everything, they look rustic, they look as though they've had a bit of wear and tear, so they're pretty good actually. They're really nice little models. But Chris decided to try a resin model, and he used a water-based resin, and it came out beautifully crisp and clean. So he sent a bunch of these buffer stops through to me, and I thought I'd paint them up and install them on little barred field to start with. So these two are from the original batch, and they're FDM prints, which is that plastic filament for anyone who doesn't know. And the third one here, I put in a water-based resin print, and as I say, they're nice and sharp and crisp and everything. Very nice model. So this is not actually the first one that went in. This is the second one, but the first model went in, and when Chris sent it to me, it was painted with an enamel paint, but it wasn't painted underneath the sleepers. So I then gave it a coat of acrylic paints, 3 colours, different colours, to make it all dirty and rusty looking, added some pastels to it, and then at the end of the siding here I put down neat PVA, set the buffer into it, and waited quite a few hours until the PVA was going off, put some ballast in there, you know, brushed it off, got it all nice and schmick, and then mist sprayed it with some water and some diluted PVA to allow the ballast to set, you know, the standard method. Also added some static grass, and came back 24 hours later, and the buffer, or the rail in the buffer on this side, had started to bow upwards, and there was some bowing in the sleepers as well. So I got back to Chris about this, and he was quite perturbed that something had gone wrong with it. So he decided to strengthen the buffer. He changed the design. So strengthening the buffer means taking off that little bit of rail that was at the front, made the rail here a bit thicker, and he strengthened the supports and everything, and lost the rivet detail, and, you know, sent it through. Again, beautiful little model. So I followed the same process as I did with the first one, put it in place, and within 24 hours the sleepers were curving up, and yeah, it was a nightmare. So then Chris did a controlled test where he had painted two buffers with enamel paint, one buffer painted all over, one buffer where the enamel paint was not painted underneath the sleepers, and one buffer which had no paint at all and was sat in a little dish of water for 24 hours. And what happened was that the completely painted buffer had no change to it. The buffer that was not painted underneath the sleepers was pretty much okay, but the buffer that sat in the water completely started bowing and delaminating. So the answer to the problem is possibly the PVA, because that's water based, and certainly the mist spraying to put the ballast in, and the diluted PVA, which has got water in it as well. So Chris suggested that the answer probably would be to, with the new buffers he sent me, which is these two here, these two buffers, he said completely paint them all over with enamel paint before you do anything. So I did that, and I let them sit for 2 days. So they're painted top and bottom all over. I was methodical, made sure that they had a good coat of enamel paint on it and on them, and it was done with a brush as well, so it was a good thick coat. And then once that was done, I gave them a coat of acrylic, you know, to rough them up and all that sort of thing. Came along with chalk pastels, etc., etc. Put them in place, and then did the ballast with the mist spraying and the diluted PVA. And as you can see here, fine, no problem at all. So for those of you out there using water-based resins for your models, if you're going to do it, you should completely seal the model before you install it, and certainly before it comes near any water or anything like that. Even in a humid, moist climate, you might have some problems if the model is not completely sealed. But you don't have to use water-based resins. You can use other resins apparently, and of course there's always the FDM, which is very good. So that's just a tip, folks. Be very careful what type of resin you use for models that are going to be anywhere near moisture. So I think that's about all I can tell you, folks. Yeah, so that'll do for this update. It's fairly brief. I haven't done much. So in the meantime, though, I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a happy and safe New Year. Look out for this Omicron that's going around, and just stay safe. So I'll catch up with you in the new year. All the best to all of you, and thank you for subscribing to my channel, and thank you for continually watching what I'm putting out there. All the best to you. Take care.